Albert Breer of NFL Media calls in right now. Albert, who's the biggest name still left out there in your estimation in the free agent market in the NFL right now?
I'd say Michael Crabtree's a big name out there. I mean, obviously these guys all have to make decisions before they go into their contract years, and the fact that he was looking at $8 million a year from the Niners, at one point, maybe about a year ago, and moved and decided to roll the dice, and now he's still sitting out there with a lot of the market for guys at his position having dried up. That one's kind of eye-popping because, I mean, obviously he's a big name coming out of college, and he's been productive as a pro, played in the Super Bowl, and, it seems at least at this point like he overplayed his hand, and he may have to go somewhere in a one-year prove-it type of deal.
But what about the concept that the wide receiver draft for a second consecutive year is expected to be a bonanza?
Yeah.
And you've got him and now Dwayne Bowe, who spent time in Cleveland this weekend. Greg Jennings is now out there on the market because Mike Wallace went from Miami to Minnesota, that a lot of these veteran receivers may have to wait until the late spring or summer to catch on with a team.
I don't know if they'll have to wait that long, but in some cases it might benefit them. What you're saying is well received. We talked about it at running back last week, right? Like where that was going to affect things for DeMarco Murray and other backs out in the market, Reggie Bush, Pierre Thomas, C.J. Spiller, where a very deep group of running backs in the drafts gives teams the option to look at somebody cheaper who they're going to have under their own control for 4 years. Guys they can take in the second and third round. The same thing applies to the receiver position. I mean, if you're the Cleveland Browns and you look at the idea of bringing in a Dwayne Bowe, let's say $5 million a year, and you might be able to get Kevin White or Amari Cooper, in the draft with the 8th pick, and get him at a cheaper rate than you would be paying a veteran who, let's face it, may not have a whole lot of time left. And the more attractive option a lot of times is going to be in the draft. Here's the other thing about that too, Rich, is, I mean, the idea that it takes receivers 3 years to develop and produce, that kind of went out the window last year. I mean, we saw what Odell Beckham was able to do, Mike Evans, Sammy Watkins, Brandon Cooks played well before he got hurt. It's because of the way the college game's evolving, it's becoming more of a plug-and-play type of position, and that obviously, if you're a veteran receiver out in the market and teams are looking at you, that probably hurts you a little bit.
Albert Breer of the NFL Media Group joining me here. What do you make of the news out of the MMQB.com today that Jameis Winston currently doesn't plan to attend the draft in Chicago?
Well, I actually reached out and talked to the league on this. Remember I think Peter had it a week ago, 2 weeks ago, that Jameis went and talked to the league, right?
Yep.
Went and met with Roger and some other people at the league office. Well, I'm told that while he was there, he actually told them, his plan is to stay home in Alabama with his family and celebrate the draft that way. The league stance on it, as you might imagine, is that it's each guy's personal decision how he wants to spend draft day. You may remember Joe Thomas went fishing, I think, with his dad.
Oh, yeah, we Skyped with him. We got him out on the boat.
Right. So, this is obviously, it's a momentous day for any kid. Realizing the dream of becoming a professional athlete, let alone being the first one taken potentially. It's something I know the league wants to be careful about telling guys what to do. That said, they'd obviously really like for him to be there. Let's put the possibility that he'd be the first overall pick. And my hunch is that if the Bucs said to him, look, we'd really like you there, then maybe he would go ahead and do that. But I don't have any indication the Bucs will push him to do that.
Meanwhile, the Bucs have Marcus Mariota in their building today. Does this start the intrigue that the Bucs really are kicking the tires on him, and it's not automatically a Winston card that's going to be handed in on the last Thursday in April for him?
I still think it's Winston, but you have to do your due diligence. I think it's a sure thing they're taking a quarterback, but you have to make sure. You have to look at the other kid as intensely as you possibly can and make sure that you're getting the right one. The same way, say the Indianapolis Colts in 1998 may have felt from the beginning that taking Peyton Manning was a fait accompli, but they had to kick the tires on Ryan Leaf. It's part of the due diligence. I think what's more interesting about Mariota, Go back to his pro day last week. There were 4 general managers there within the top 6 picks of the draft. Not only were the Bucks and the Titans there, but the Jets and the Redskins were there too. And my sense of it at this point, Rich, is that it's more likely the Redskins would take him than the Jets. But you can see all 4 of those teams are interested. And, I think it at least pushes the notion now forward that the floor for Marcus Mariota, if you're one of those teams looking up potentially to go up and get him, Browns, Eagles, that 6 could be the floor.
Well, Albert, though, I mean, Marcus Mariota chosen by Washington with RG3 essentially on a walk year. I mean, what would that look like in Camp Jay Gruden? I mean, that would be quite a circus, don't you think?
Yeah, we would probably move it. We would probably set up a set in Virginia, right? My feeling is they're not going to pick up the option on him, and so then you've got a quarterback going into a contract year, and that's the way it works. Is that if you've got guys at certain positions going into contract years, and the Redskins would have 2 of them in that case, and Griffin and Cousins, that you are looking to build forward at the position. Now, my feeling, I don't think anybody in the Redskins building is married to the idea of keeping RG3. I think that he is very much playing for his future in Washington this year. And just because he takes the first snap during OTAs or training camp doesn't mean he's going to be the starter. And if the right guy's there, I think there's a good chance that they would, if they feel like Marcus Mariota is the right guy, I could certainly see Scott McCloughan and Jay Gruden pulling the trigger. And here's a nuance to everything you've seen from the Redskins. They've been awfully quiet, right?
Yep.
This is as quiet as we've seen them in a while. That tells me McCloughan's in charge. That tells me, at least for now, he really has the authority because this is the way that he wants to do business. He's from that Ron Wolf system in Green Bay. He worked under Ted Thompson. He built that Niners team. He worked with John Schneider in Seattle, very draft-centric. So the fact that they are going bargain basement shopping in free agency and pushing their focus towards the draft tells me that McCloughan's swinging an awfully big stick in that organization.
And then when is the go or no-go on the RG3 decision, whether or not to pick up his option?
So it's right before the draft. I believe the date is, and I want to say it's the end of April this year. It was the beginning of May last year, but that was because the draft was later.
Yep.
The draft was, middle of May last year. So the draft's a little earlier this year. I believe it's the week before the draft where all those teams that drafted first round, all the guys with all the first round picks from 2012 have decisions on their 2016 options, and so for RG3, the price tag for that option is $16 million.
That's not.
I mean, there's no way the Redskins are picking that up.
Albert Breer of NFL Media, I want to hit you on some quick hitters before I let you go. Big Ben's contract, what a monster deal for Big Ben, announced in the late afternoon Eastern time on Friday. What did you make of Big Ben's contract in Pittsburgh?
It just affirms the commitment from the organization. It really underscores that, like he and Todd Haley and owners, they're all on the same page now. There have been some rocky waters, obviously, but they set the record for money over the first 3 years, second best average per year in new money to only Aaron Rodgers. And then the guarantee, although it was only for injury, is a record also. So strong statement that they believe that Ben Roethlisberger is their quarterback going forward. And it's also, I think, another acknowledgement, league-wide, that these guys can play at that position into their late 30s. I mean, we've seen it from Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, and Steelers are anticipating a similar scenario playing out with Ben Roethlisberger.
And how's the scenario playing out with Adrian Peterson? We're already hearing some rumblings maybe about Arizona, which, obviously is not Dallas, which is where everybody's...
If he really wants to push a trade, Rich, here's the thing, okay?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
If he really wants to push a trade, financial flexibility is going to be key. He's got that $13 million number. Cap space is drying up across the league. Cash is drying up across the league. Is he willing to adjust that number? I don't know how many teams are out there that will be willing to swallow the $13 million and would be desirable to Adrian Peterson that would go through with that type of transaction. So, I don't think Dallas is going to be in the running. It's a new day with the Cowboys. They're being much more fiscally responsible. Arizona, you could see it down the line. There aren't suitors where you can match up the cap space and the type of situation that Adrian Peterson would desire and say that makes sense. So I still think chances are he winds up working out something to come back to Minnesota.
Well, I mean, but that just the underlying fire from this smoke could be the fact that either the Vikings are shopping him or they have given Adrian's team a permission to seek a trade. So something has to be going on in that regard, Albert, one way or the other, correct?
Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, I know the football, again, I mean, this has been the case in September. The football people want to keep him. Mike Zimmer wants him back. Rick Spielman wants him back. Norv Turner wants him back. They want him there. It's going to be hard to get proper value. And part of that isn't just wanting the player. Part of that is it's going to be very difficult to get proper value for him, based on all the circumstances surrounding him. And that's what's going to make it difficult. So it would be a complex trade to pull off, and it would be very, very difficult for the Vikings to get what's proper value for a player that's obviously transcendent talent, despite everything that's gone on over the last year.
Nervous about the 10 seed against VCU Friday afternoon in Portland?
Oh, I sure am. Okay. I wouldn't have it any other way. So
no, I know.
I still think we get by them. Arizona is going to be a lot tougher nut to crack.
You think?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Hey, listen, at least you're in it. Enjoy it.
There's some analysis for you, Rich.
Yes.
You can only get that in one place.
Right here. Thanks, Albert. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Rich.
You bet. That's Albert Breer, NFL Media.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.